review those.
Yes. So moved.
Second.
And is there any discussion about that motion to approve the minutes? All right, no discussion. Call vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we will introduce the East Bank Development Authority staff, starting with our new CEO, Ben York.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the opportunity. Very excited. We got called new staff the other day. I think we've been around for a while. We're not new staff to anybody, but we are new to this board, and we're very excited about the opportunities and the next steps. I will say, just a point of order and just to get it out in the open, there's a contract negotiation discussion that needs to occur, and I think the board chair and I have talked about it. It'll be next month. We'll kind of table that for this month, get through the intergovernmental agreement discussion, and then re-pick that up next month. But I would like to say thank you all for attendance. I would like to say thank you all for accepting the challenge and the call to be on this board and this authority. And let's see if we can navigate the slides. Just a brief intro. I am a 2005 graduate of Tennessee Tech. I am a native Nashvilleian, born in Inglewood when they still called it Inglewood, not East Nashville. And so I know Nashville. I grew up walking these streets. My great-grandmother's house is 11th and over at 11th near where Bill Martin's used to be. So I know the area well and excited about the opportunities of an often overlooked area of our town, trying to redevelop it. And so I won't read the slides to you, but I have been with Metro for 14 years, started as an EIT and worked my way up to managing the development section at NDOT, and so Public Works, then NDOT. And so looking forward to the challenges and opportunities that come with the next phase of my career. As you see there, I've been married for 23 years to my beautiful wife and have two children who are Tennessee Tech grad or Tennessee Tech student and hopeful Vanderbilt student. So, and then my co-partner here is my first act as kind of coming over and being the CEO was to immediately ensure that the heart of the vision stays with the vision. Anna has been a key component of making sure that we move from vision to implementation in a very succinct fashion. She is the heartbeat of our team and making sure that we stay true to our word as making sure the vision is key and the paramount piece of infrastructure in all of our discussions. And so making sure that she stayed on the team. You can see here that she is a 2004 graduate of Sheffield. Obviously, that's not on our side of the pond, but I can assure you she went to Oklahoma, so that's about as red-blooded as it gets. And so that's where she met her husband, and they've been married since. And so she has two children. She does live in East Nashville and is a great asset to our team. So that's a brief introduction to all of the East Bank Development Authority staff. And so as such, there's just two of us. We wanted to ensure that the program didn't have holes. We had to make sure that there were people and bodies and places to. Right now, there's 2 additional meetings going on, and we have program staff from HDR. That's a consultant that we chose. We went through a standard Metro procurement to obtain that contract with that team. We had several contractors who were on there who came forward to bid on that for that proposal. We brought them in, and so I'll ask Jim Sarnicki, who is our program management consultant team lead, to join me. Here he comes. And so he and his team have been crucial in supplementing Metro staff and augmenting Metro staff. And so when there are financial discovery, we've been building a model for the financial side of how we get this constructed over the next decades. And so his team has been instrumental in making sure that we have all of those pieces in place. And so I'm going to turn it over, allow him to give a little bit of a discussion about what it is the HDR team is supporting Metro with and the East Bank team with, and allowing us to grow our team in that way. And so, Jim Zarnicki.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Glad to be here and share with you a little bit of our role as the program manager. First and foremost, we're thrilled to support an effort such as the East Bank and work as an extension of staff for Metro and the authority at this point. We've put together a robust team to respond to the fluidity of the program and whatever needs may be whatever needs may arise and be able to respond to those needs in real time. Can I see the next slide, please? Oh, there it is. All right, so the ask is that we support the implementation of the vision plan. And so as you can see, the existing conditions, obviously the stadium is under construction. So transitioning from what you see on the left side of the slide to the right side of the slide is quite an undertaking. So we've brought on disciplined leads from all parts of our organization to help in that effort. The geographic area of our responsibility is the full 550 acres beyond the original acreage, the 300 acres in the vision plan. So this would be Cumberland River on the left and the highway system on the right. So that entire island, if you will, is under our purview. And a little bit about our team. We have 6 full-time staff dedicated to the East Bank program, starting with Miranda Smeck, who's with us today. She's our program coordinator. She helps us make sure we're doing the right things at the right time and talking to the right people. So she's very instrumental. She is a professional engineer and specializes in traffic, so she brings a lot of value to the program. Tom Kleinert is our deputy program manager for engineering. All things engineering fall under his area of responsibility. He's also a licensed engineer in a number of states, and he is a Vandy grad. He's been in Nashville for the duration, so we're happy to have him as well. Mike Jovanovich, he's the deputy program manager for program controls. I worked with Mike in a program in South Carolina, and I asked him to join us here in Nashville, and he was gracious enough to do so. He is a master sergeant from the Air Force, retired. During his time in the Air Force, he had managed 3,000 people. He has a PhD in business management, so he's a really good add to our team as well. Dirk Peterson is a licensed engineer. We've brought him on over the last couple of months. He's specializes in civil engineering, also here in Nashville. And we're really happy that Kaylee Newcomb has decided to join us. There's an asterisk under her picture. She's going to start this coming Monday on the 28th. And she's also recently been licensed as a professional engineer as well. So we have a lot of horsepower here and a lot of good knowledge on our team. And I am the program manager. The buck kind of stops here. I've been in this business for 35 years. I've started in engineering, construction, planning. I have a master's degree in planning and have helped to manage a number of robust programs. So, again, thrilled to be part of this one. And we have, I'd be remiss not to mention our partners at the bottom of the slide. They also add a lot of value to our team with various specializations and really bring a lot of good work and additional horsepower. Our areas of responsibility is kind of from a broad perspective. Planning and design construction oversight is one of our main responsibilities and areas of focus where consultants do the design work and we provide oversight and the same with their planning work and make sure that their documents are in line with fulfilling the vision, make sure that they're following code, design standards, et cetera, and pass muster with the authority before implementation. We also look at financial planning, project delivery strategy. We help secure grants for funding for various projects, et cetera. And then, and I wanted to point out kind of the number of projects that are going on right now. A lot of it is behind the scenes because it's in planning and design, so it's not visible on the ground, but they will be soon. And so with Fallon, we assist in the coordination of their efforts under the IDA. They have a number of different projects or phases under the IDA that you'll hear more about. So we're helping stage those investments, and we're helping stage the infrastructure investments to get utilities and to get the roadways to those projects when they come online. East Bank Boulevard, AECom is doing the NEPA PE, so we're providing oversight with that. We assisted with the procurement of that contract in terms of helping go through the scope and the negotiation of fee and schedule and those things. So that team is off to a good start. And let me just skip a couple for the essence of time. Stormwater quality management is another big project that's coming online. We have a district-wide stormwater solution for Central Waterfront, and this will help in our water quality. So we'll bring the excess water to a detention pond fairly near to the river, and then so when we discharge that water into the river, it's of the appropriate quality standard. Two more slides. And so these are some other projects, special events planning with all the construction and different projects and road closures and bike closures and things like that. We help manage wayfinding. How do we get lots of people during special events in and out of East Bank to the stadium and so forth. Gallatin, Main Street, Spokes. We collaborate with NDOT extensively on these projects to make sure they're integrated in the East Bank. And then the Sports Authority has a lot of projects, as you're aware of, that we coordinate and collaborate with them as well to move those forward. And then last slide is, while our plate is full now, we will get more busy. The board, the authority, the consultants, the designers, contractors, everybody is going to get more busy. As you can see, there's a lot of big projects and programs on deck. Oracle at some point will see their plans, and we'll have to figure out how to get all the public infrastructure to serve that and some of these others, very large programs coming to fruition in the relatively near term. And then with that, if there's any questions.
Thanks, Jim, for the presentation. Guys, quick clarifying question. On the Sports Authority projects, are y'all serving in a coordinating role, or are you hired directly by the Sports Authority to oversee some of those?
No, we are not contracted through the Sports Authority. The Cumming Group is their program manager, but we collaborate with the Cumming Group and the Titans because we have to make sure that the public infrastructure serves those facilities and that they're integrated with the rest of the vision plan. Our contract is directly with the authority.
Right, great.
Jim, just curious, when did y'all come on board? I mean, the visioning's been happening for years. When did y'all's crew start helping out?
It was October of 2023.
Seeing no more questions, I appreciate Jim. Thank you very much. Just to clarify and reiterate, the intent to have HDR on our team is to augment East Bank development staff and to assist in the overall coordination with metro agencies. This is a huge lift, and it would be a massive time drain and a massive employment suck on the metro agencies. And so our role and our kind of cog in this wheel is to ensure that expeditious movement through the metro stream and to assist metro staff with getting plans, concepts to them in an appropriate place with the appropriate level of detail so that they can actively move on them in a quick manner. So with that said, and thank you, Jim, I will invite Sean Seaman, who is the program lead for the Fallon Company, to come to the table as well. We're going to do just a brief discussion in agenda item number 6 to have a conversation about what the Fallon Company is, what they're doing, and their team structure here in Nashville. So,
great. Thank you, Ben. Good morning, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Sean Seaman. I am Chief Development Officer for the Fallon Company. The Fallon Company was the selected developer for the IDA parcels at the East Bank development. I'm relatively new to the Fallon Company. I joined in January of this year. I come from a long line of large mixed-use, complicated developments similar to the East Bank project. I was most recently the president of Hoffman Development in Washington, D.C., did the wharf project on the southwest waterfront along the Potomac River in D.C. So I'm excited to take some of the knowledge and experience that I had with that project and expand it here in Nashville on the East Bank project and join the Fallon team that is here already. The team members that we have in the audience today are Trail Webb, who's been with the company for 3 years, and Katie Lentel, who's our government relations and press coordinator. Trail came from Metro previously and was with Ryman Hospitality before that. He has a long history of design and planning expertise that we'll be leaning on in the project. Ben is not here with us today, but started the Fallon office here in Nashville 5 years ago. So I'm joining a seasoned team. And I'm here today to give you an update on where the project stands and what the next steps are for the project. It's an exciting time. I think a lot of the legal, zoning, planning work for how the project's going to operate are behind us, and we're now working on the more exciting design, planning, the placemaking, what it looks like for people, and then starting to work on selecting architects and staffing up the project to begin the process of delivering it. Let me just go backwards in time a little bit. I think many of these dates are not unfamiliar to this group, but I figured it's worth going through the last 2 years. It's been sort of a rapid development of the process to get to where we're at today. The RFP was issued in January of 2023. Fallon selected in September of that year. In April of last year, so about a year ago, Metro Council approved the MDA, and then the MDA was executed in November of 2024. And what's really happened since that time, from a design perspective, is a lot of work on the public realm framework plan that was adopted 2 weeks ago, I believe, by the Downtown Code Design Review Committee, April 3rd. And that really set the framework for what the public realm is going to look like. We haven't really gotten into the architecture of the buildings yet, but the public realm framework plan talks about the look, the feel, the ground floor plane, what the materiality will be, what the plantings and the place-making elements of the project are really intended to be once we get to the building design and the vertical development. So I thought it would be worth just going through some of the slides from the public realm framework plan that was released by Metro. It's on the website, so if you want to look at greater detail. And it was really built around two sort of major connectors. One was the Music City Mile, which connects back to downtown Nashville. So to the west, the Music City Mile, the end of the Siegenthaler Bridge, and how that interfaces with the project. It's an elevated walkway that has plantings and cafes and activation. And then the second is the Cumberland Walk, which connects East Nashville, the neighborhoods of East Nashville, to the project, through the project to the Cumberland River. And this just shows some of the imagery that was created. Field Operations was our landscape architect. They did the High Line in New York. KPF was the master planner for the IDA parcels. This is looking back west towards downtown Nashville. This is at parcel D, and I'll show you the parcel plan, but this is really landing at the foot of the South Plaza, just south of the new Titan Stadium, and our Block C development, which will be the first development of the project. This is looking back towards Nashville from there. This is looking towards parcel C and to the Titan Stadium to the east. This is actually the corner of the first phase of development. So Block C and I'll get into the parcel plan in a moment, but this is identifying what the look and feel and the intent is with the retail, and it's multi-level retail and activation. This is immediately adjacent to the South Plaza and Titan Stadium. You can see the stadium, the new stadium in the background, and South Plaza is on your left. So the idea is to really activate that space and interface the new buildings and the Fallon development with the Titans development that's occurring. And then this just shows some of the character, fire pits, real plantings, and depth of soil that would support trees, even on these elevated slabs, areas for seating and activation and cafes. And then lastly, this is the Cumberland Walk. So this is looking west towards the Cumberland River as you walk through the project site. So this is the ground level connection, the connection back to the East Bank neighborhoods along Victory Avenue. So I'll get a little bit into the current parcel plan. I'm sure everyone's wondering what Fallon's doing next door. The Titans are out of the ground and, well underway. And I think the question is what's going on with the Fallon parcels. We're a smaller part of the larger East Bank vision that Metro and Ben and Anna have been working on for so long. But our 30 acres and the area just to the south of the football stadium is going to be one of the first developments that comes out of the ground, and it'll really set the character for what the project's going to be. So we'll focus on blocks C and G for this discussion. The area that's identified in blue will be the first developments that you see come out of the ground and are designed by Fallon as part of our project. And I'll show you some of the more granular breakdown of C and G in a moment. As part of that, the C and G will be the Fallon contributions to the public realm as part of the East Bank plan for the IDA parcels. Titans are finishing the South Plaza as part of that, and then also the 2nd Street connector from Shelby to Victory Avenue. So that part of the public realm will be constructed, as well as the buildings on C and G. So on both sides of Shelby, that's the intent as with our first phase. And then this has turned everything 90 degrees. So north is now to your right, or I'm sorry, to the top of the page. Titan Stadium is to the top of the page. The river is to your left. And Shelby is on is curving down towards KVB on the bottom. So you can see South Plaza at the top of the page. This shows our current intended phasing. Right now, we've issued an RFP to architects for both C1 and C2. C1 is intended to be a full-service hotel with meeting, banquet, and event space. C2 is intended to be a multifamily apartment building. It would have 10% affordable within that building. And then G1 is our affordable building. Right now, currently anticipated to be between 300 and 325 units of affordable housing. All of those, the design will commence within the next 30 to 60 days. And we're working with Ben and Anna on getting the architects approved per the MDA. We haven't made a selection yet, and we'll certainly keep everyone apprised as the process goes through. We'll be doing interviews in the next month. But we'll be selecting an architect to do the master plan for Block C, and that includes the below-grade garage. It includes the retail podium, the place-making interface with South Plaza and 2nd Street, and really the look and feel of the streets and the character of that Block C development. That architect may or may not be the same architect that does the hotel vertical architecture and then the multifamily architecture on C2. So that really shows the phasing of phase one. The anticipation is that we would begin construction mid to late 2026. So it's starting to get quite real now, where we're going to be selecting architects. We're going to be working on designs for the next 9 to 12 months. We'll be staffing up in that same time frame with experts on the various use types, and then also folks to help on construction, permitting, estimating. So that's phase one. The later phases are a little bit more prospective because they're out in the future, but you can see sort of the intent is to go from east to west. And that was really necessitated by the Titan Stadium and trying to develop around the stadium so that was a place when the stadium delivered at the outside of the project, and then work our way back west towards the river with the later phases, including more residential, retail, and office. So that's sort of where we're at. The G2, which is out on Interstate, is office. That's adjacent to the multifamily. We would prefer to build that as quickly as we can. Right now, there's not really demand for office in this location. So we're going to begin actively marketing that this coming year as well. So that will be out there, and we'll be looking for anchor tenants for office at the project.
Sean, I may have missed. Did you say that you're doing C1, C2, and G1 simultaneously?
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. And you mentioned retail. Is G1 all affordable housing, or is there a mixed use component?
No, there's ground floor retail on G1, including a daycare.
Okay, great.
So we're targeting trying to attract grocer or drugstore, daycare, neighborhood serving uses, particularly along Shelby Avenue.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. And that's actually it for presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my knowledge.
Hey, Sean. Question. You said how many affordable units?
The first phase will include 325 in the dedicated affordable building. That's G1, 300 to 325. They're still working on schematic plans.
Okay. What are the metrics are you using to define that as affordable?
That's for 60% and 80% AMI. I'm sorry, the all affordable building is for 60% AMI, and then block C2 is the market rate building that'll have 10% affordable housing at 60% and 80% AMI.
Okay. Do you know what the AMI is right now?
Do you know, Ben? I don't know I don't right now.
Okay. I was just trying to, give you some education on it because of AMI right now is like $107,000.
Yes, sir.
At 60%, the community and the people that I'm trying to serve,
Yep.
that's not going to be affordable. So if that was something that you all can think about and, in the future or whatever, and is the daycare going to be on a sliding scale pay, or is it just going to be a set?
We first need to identify who the operator is going to be, and we've started to have those conversations. The hope and intent is that we attract the residents of the building and the neighboring buildings into that daycare center. So that's something that we want to talk to the operator about once we get them on board.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
I got a question. Is there a vision for home ownership anywhere in the schematic, or is it all rental?
I'll ask. I would like to see that because I think it adds, permanent residents and folks that are a little bit less transient than the multifamily. I think right now that's why I looked at Ben. I'm not sure that the MDA contemplates it, but I think we have a lot of sites identified as multifamily that could be both for rent or for sale if we could figure out the mechanics for it. And I've done air rights condos on ground leases in DC. So it's something that's potentially possible. It's just, how that's legally structured, but it would be something that we would look into. Thanks.
Hey, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
You mentioned the start date mid to late 26. What's the start date and what's the end date?
The end date, it really depends on which the use is, but it's probably 24 to 30 months for construction time frame. We're targeting end of 28 or very early 2029 for delivery of those first parcels. And that's predicated on starting in probably September or October of next year at the latest.
And on the architect selection, is there any attempt to hire local?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a target of 25% small woman-owned minority businesses, and with a particular preference for local Nashville folks on the team. We're working with staff on that.
And I guess this is a Ben question, or maybe later with Saul. How does this dovetail with the end date on the hotel with the original agreement?
Yeah, it tracks. We had always kind of penciled in 24 months from everybody signing on the dotted line to shovels at the ground to 24 months, kind of 2 24-month blocks to having doors open. And so it tracks pretty consistently with what we had always kind of penciled in our heads as to when the end date was for ribbon cuttings.
I want to piggyback on your question, Jim, just for clarity, because when he asked if any of the architects would be local, you said 25% minority, woman-owned, et cetera. But I think that the bigger question is when you're sending those RFPs out, are you considering the main contracts going to local architects included in that initial swath?
Right now we have RFPs out to 12 firms, I believe. Several of those have local Nashville architects as co-lead or project architects working on production and co-authoring the design. So a lot of them are national firms, but also a lot of them have Nashville offices.
Okay.
So we'll be tracking that. Some of the small minority woman-owned businesses are not Nashville businesses, but we're going through all the RFPs right now, sort of scoring the attributes and the cost and the scope of services, and we haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah, totally understand.
I understand that's a priority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is the face of our city, and we want to make sure that
Sure.
local architects are considered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Will do.
Sean, can we go back to that slide, just the last slide? I'm curious, for the parcels that are not phase one, you had 2029, 2030, that are starting a real time horizon out, what is the short-term development for use of them when they're, like, for instance, I'm looking at C4, which could be, 8 years from now, but is also right by the Titan Stadium and is currently construction. Will Titan's team or Fallon be doing a temporary, leveling with trees, sort of parkland, or will that just be fenced off for 8 years? Or, what happens to those parcels in terms of the day-to-day regular use of the community until we get to 29, 31, 32?
Sure, that's a great question. In the near term, there are some parking obligations on the site for the Titans, so that will continue to be required to provide some amount of parking. With that said, I think we're looking at activation and programming on the vacant project sites. It may be seasonal, if to the extent that we can do something a little bit more permanent. I think getting people familiar with the site through activation and programming is a good way to jumpstart the project. We'll obviously have to provide temporary and safe connections for folks coming from downtown on game days or to events at the Titan Stadium. So we're starting to look at when C1 and C2 are done and G1, what the path of travel is over the Siegenthaler Bridge, depending on what happens on Block E, but having stairs and safe connection down. And we want the place to actually be inviting and have some activation so it doesn't look like vacant parking lots as the approach to our brand new development. So I think we're mutually aligned on trying to do something.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thrust of my question, and also just curiosity about what the agreement requires for that, because it's certainly, even if it's temporary. I mean, I know some of them are literally parking lots right now, but really this construction footprint right now could be put in a temporary appealing situation or left sort of, like a construction site for a long time. So I was curious both what's required and what's hoped.
Yeah, from a Metro perspective and the Development Authority perspective, we will have a requirement to provide the Titans the required parking on event days. And so our intent would be not to have to spend dollars to reinvent the wheel on parking if we can maintain existing parking lots for a time until such a time as there's convenient uses that supplement parking in that vein. And so that would be our intent, would be to leave the surface parking lots until they're taken down for development parcels in that vein. And so that's the intent from the East Bank Metro side. But as Sean said, Monday through Friday activation, non-special event day activation, getting communities down into the area to reconnect with an area that has not been connected with in a meaningful way in years. So.
And then one other question I had, again, think about the overall project. I know it's in the agreement once this building we're in is ready to be torn down. That's obvious. The phase one master plan that we look at always includes the part going down to the river. But that's not included in this focus. So is that sort of where does the development of like the park down to the river and all that fit into the timeline of these phases that we see? Yeah, or is that a question mark right now?
There's a little bit of a speculative question mark on that. And so from a Metro perspective, there are requirements in the Titans agreement for park use and all of the things that structured into the Titans deal that allowed them uses on special event days in that park space. As far as a time frame for construction, that's still a little bit of a to be determined because we got to get this building gone. And as Jim mentioned earlier, there's a stormwater component that has to be kind of penciled in and figured out. And so there's a long lead on design. We are working on an interim condition of park space. We're doing some of the park planning and the open space planning as well, as far as what does this park need, what does this park want to be, what would be used by the community. And so some of that work is occurring in the background, but I can't tell you with certainty when that would occur. But it's safe to say it's within the early 2030s.
That's, excuse me, that same question would roll over to D and E as well,
Yes.
because they'll, obviously if you don't start till 2031 or so, it's still a construction site, right?
Potentially, yes.
I have a quick, this is kind of going back to the public realm plan, but pedestrian connections to the sites and through the sites to downtown. I saw the Cumberland Walk really prioritizes getting folks from East Nashville to the river, but I'm thinking through how you connect pedestrians to the Siegenthaler Bridge, and then also thinking about that G1 site where the affordable housing and daycare is. Particularly, I live right over there, have the experience of pushing a stroller through this whole area. Can you talk through getting to those destinations and how it's imagined? And this visual is really nice to kind of look at that.
Do you want to? Yeah, I think one of the focuses for us, because we're doing C and G, particularly C2 and G1 first, is what that interface along Shelby looks like. Both Shelby and then the intersection with Interstate once you get past the gas station. We don't control that corner, which is unfortunate, but I think the crossing on 2nd Street there and trying to create an inviting environment to get from the G parcels to the C parcels is of critical importance to us, because part of our project is across Shelby Avenue. And I think there's plans as part of infrastructure in the future for the project to make Shelby look quite a bit more appealing, whether it's trees down the median or trees on both sides, and improving the crosswalks in that intersection. That's very important. As far as connections from Siegenthaler, if we cut off parts of the elevated bridge as part of the construction, that's part of the design that we're looking at right now, particularly for bike traffic. I mean, we're looking at a bike ramp close to where the elevator is right now, as part of the design, as part of these early phases. That's with Metro. So the bike ramp, and then also continuing part of the new construction on the Music City Mile. That would be the intent, so that there's a seamless travel path from downtown across. So your question was sort of both directions, but the neighborhood connection is very important, because right now it's not very inviting to get across that street. And I think adding some trees and some focus on crosswalks and striping the crosswalks appropriately and getting the signalization right is going to be important as part of both C and G. Is that okay? Thanks.
All right. No other questions? Cool. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
So, next item on our agenda is just a brief discussion on the AECOM contract and what their work is doing. They are a nationally recognized firm. As such, during the RFP process, well, let me back up. This is for the Boulevard design and the environmental. So the Boulevard is the sinuous thread that ties all 550 acres of the East Bank together, but also ties the East Bank to other neighborhoods, North Nashville, East Nashville, downtown, through east-west connections and north and south connections. And so Metro sought 2 different RAISE grants through 2 different processes. We were on the Secretary's desk to be approved, but did not make the final cut on either one of those RAISE grants. And so Metro then indicated we've got to get this environmental. We can't just keep spinning our wheels. And so with all the development pressure looming from River North and from the Central Waterfront and potential scrap metal redevelopment, we put the dollars forward to start the process of the environmental documentation, which is what we are now encumbered with the AECOM team. AECOM's team was selected in part because of their prowess in some of their work nationally on light rail and BRT. BRT is the backbone of this proposal. We wanted to bring in an industry leader in that, and we have seen that through some of their project documentation that they are. Their team is local and national at the same time, and so a lot of our team members are our national team members and unavailable to meet today because they're coming in on Thursday for a public meeting, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so our project lead, and I'll point out here, the main is Bridget Moynihan. She's an industry leader in the transit space on design and implementation. And over the last, I believe, 15 plus years, that's what she's been working on in the Southeast. And so we're happy to have her as a lead on this team. And so the key points to take away from the design of this is we're building in resiliency. The Army Corps of Engineers, in partnership with our Metro Water team, has indicated that as we know, we're in a flood-prone area. And so in order to alleviate and mitigate those risks to the extent possible, we have worked with our Corps engineers and our Metro Water team to establish the new datum for flood elevation for 100-year. And those processes are working through the approval, and we'll be working with them on that. One of the other key components is connectivity. And would that be walking, biking, transit, pedestrian, last mile considerations for our transit, all of the things that make up mobility. We're looking at connectivity and how we move people and goods through to and through this area. And then additionally, safety. We're working with our partners at NDOT to ensure that we're meeting all of the standards, the best engineering practices, and the standard metrics that they would incur on any road design. And so we're working with them on that. Scope overview. To say right now, we are currently within scope, we're within budget, and we're within the current allotted timeline. It's a 24-month window. It's a very tight window. We want it to be shovel ready in order to, when this stadium comes down, we're seeking federal grants or local grants or state grants and opportunities for partnership with P3s, whatever the case may be, so that we are standing shovel ready when we're ready to do these, to push forward with this development of this roadway. And so you can see the items that are within their scope. Mr. Solomon, in a few minutes, we'll talk about what's in their contract when we get into some of the contracts. And so just wanted to hit real quickly on that. Here is their timeline and their 24-month schedule. We are currently in the public access and public meeting space and trying to connect with the public to ensure that we're hearing, seeing, and understanding the needs of the community. I will say that we're building on the public engagement that had already previously been done with the Imagine East Bank. We're in an implementation stage of that document, and so that's where we are on their timeline. Just to note, this summer we will be finalizing 30% conceptual documents with them for design, so that we will be kind of laying in the groundwork for what the design is and what it looks like.
Hey, Ben, how are we collecting that the community engagement feedback?
It's going to be done in person at the public meeting, and then there's also a QR code and a link to a virtual document that can be done as well.
And that's condensed, and then it'll be publicly accessible.
When the link goes live, I'll share it with this board so that you'll have it as well. But the link doesn't go live till Thursday.
Right. Thank you.
But yes, I will share that with you. The need and the why. Why are we building a boulevard? What is the necessity for it? We're looking at it as there's a massive amount of density that is approved by right. There's also a massive amount of density that is left on the table to be approved by right or by rezonings. And so we're looking at opportunities to increase mobility and increase connectivity through just with the East Bank Boulevard and with all of the substantive design work that will occur afterwards for side roads and the north-south laterals, and then the east-west connectors that go between those two. You've all seen this. This came straight from the Imagine East Bank vision document. This is a very detailed description of how the connectivity of this area works. We can walk through this at a later date in greater, finer grain detail. Not to say we don't need to bog down today on a lot of this detail, but I do want to kind of get in the weeds with this group at some point on how we intend to move people and goods in this area and through this area. And then the public meeting is on Thursday. It's at Cross Point Church, just up the street. They've been a willing and a gracious partner to assist us throughout the visioning document process, to host public meetings and to allow us to use their space. And then, like I said, the public link will go live on the 24th. So I'll pause there, and I'll ask Saul to come join me before we move into our next topic. So are there any questions on the Boulevard?
Ben, I have a quick one.
Yes.
For Thursday's public meeting, can you just clarify the range of options that the public will be looking to give feedback on? What are the alternatives?
Yeah, so the intent is to take the work that was in the vision document, put it on boards, put it on the slideshow, and allow members of the public to see, to understand the necessity for certain uses over certain others, and allow for a good discussion and a dialogue on what is the proposed, what is the preferred, what are considered alternatives, and to really kind of lean into making sure we're following the approved process that NEPA lays in.
Great.
Any other? Okay. All right. With that, we'll transition into item 8, the IGA. And I will just give a brief kind of run through the last slides, or the last month's slides. These are not new. These are old. These are things that we discussed last time, that you had seen last time from Mr. Mendez. And the discussion from that, just a reminder that the summary of the IGA is that there are assets, employees, and the powers that are being transitioned to the East Bank Development Authority, and then the terms. And so I won't dwell on any of these too long. I think we all kind of know them, but I did want to have them here in case there is discussion or dialogue on any of the points. The land that is obviously in discussion is the 30 acres that is transitioning from the IDA to the Development Authority. There's also the land that this building sits on, which is about 29.5 acres. And then the contracts that are being transferred as well are the Fallon Master Development Agreement, the civil engineering contract from Kimley Horn, AECOM's Boulevard contract, and then the HDR program management contract. Assets, I think we've all kind of digested this pretty well, but it's all here in black and white if we need to go back and discuss any of it. And then Metro employees that will be transitioning are myself and Ms. Greider, and then powers that were through the state enabling legislation, and financial terms. The agreement length is obviously forever, hopefully, and that we can continue this in perpetuity. And with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions, or we'll transition to Saul's work that he's done to understand the contracts as they were laid into in transitioning to the board.
Ben, can you scroll back to the site plan?
Yes.
There's a lot of discussion on the south side between C, G, E. What about the part of B that's got some rendering, some massing, and then a blank slate, and then A? We didn't really speak to that much.
Yeah, A is the future transit center. It has air rights available above it for affordable housing development for the Fallon Company. And then B is also a mixed-use development that is available to the Fallon Company. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to look to Saul to make sure I'm saying this correctly, that there are metrics in which the Fallon Company has to hit in order to receive rights to those parcels. He's shaking his head, so I feel better about what I just said. So I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on television, so I'm making sure that my legal representation is assuring me on that. And so, yes, I think there are provisions in which they get to inherit those properties if they meet certain metrics within the development on the south side.
So back to the questions that were asked about the vacant lots that won't be developed till 32 and on and on. What happens to be? Is it just become a surface parking lot or something to that effect?
It is available for it will be available for surface parking when the stadium construction team vacates that lot.
Okay. Thank you.
That was good. Thank you. I don't want a legal job.
Okay, so there are several agreements that are being assigned to the authority. My partner Michael Mills is here. Michael did the heavy lifting on reading through the contracts and developing slides for them. As usual, I'm just a pretty face. So,
Hey, Saul, can I
yes, sir.
real quick before you get started? And this is just maybe a question for the members here. So we're discussing this IGA that Saul is involved with. We talked about hiring an attorney as well to represent the board. Should we do that before we discuss this agreement? I'm asking Emily because you're the lawyer.
We hired Saul to represent us.
Only on this agreement,
Correct.
not relative to anything else. So I'm just it's a point of question. I mean,
Yeah, I
maybe-
mean, at this point,
you feel good about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the HDR engineering contract briefly, the AECOM contract, and the Fallon contract. So this is the HDR scope as put in the agreement. I think they did a great job explaining what they are. And I think what Ben is really saying is that if this was a grown-up, if the East Bank Authority was a grown-up business, and was staffed correctly, a lot of this work would be done by staff. And so given the fact that Ben does not have that, HCR has set up and has stepped in to performing what would normally be done by staff. And so it's a very, very large responsibility given the scope of the work. And this agreement will be signed to us, even though it covers all 500 acres. So, so again, this is all of what they've done, this is all identified in the contract. It's everything that basically HDR talked about earlier, and it's set out in a schedule to the agreement. So you can see how much there is. What's not in scope is they are not the general contractor. They want to make that, very, very clear. That they are going to be coordinating with contractors. They're going to be helping with design work, everything a staff member would do, but they are not the general contractor. The estimated contract value is $25 million. They do bill on time and materials basis. There are pages of rates put forth in the agreement. And it's for a term of 5 years. This is on Metro's form. It can be terminated really at any time upon 30 days notice. So, okay, any question about that one?
Is the termination upon 30 days notice, is that mutually terminable by
Yes.
the authority?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're getting to the Fallon agreement. As Michael pointed out, this is an unbelievably complicated agreement and series of agreements to get this deal done, because you are drafting an agreement that everything's going to take place in the future over sometimes decades. And the agreement generally gives a framework for how this is going to work. And I have to give a lot of praise that people worked on this deal and papered it for such a complex transaction. They did an incredible job holding it together. And so hopefully Michael and I have become enough of an expert that we can answer most of your questions. But basically, as you know, the master developer is actually an affiliate of the Fallon Company. It's called Nashville Development, TFC Nashville Development, LLC. Although the parent company, the Fallon Company, does guarantee the obligations of its affiliate in the agreements. Okay. But when we refer to developer, we're referring to the Fallon Group, at least for purposes of these slides. We all know what's in scope. As Ben pointed out, B and E2 are contingent and are not in scope only if certain things occur, and we'll talk about that later. And I'm talking about it right now. Okay, so parcel B is available if within 12 years of completion of the conditions, basically having all approvals and infrastructure done, that they've commenced construction on 300 affordable units, then 700 residential units, and third, basically 1,250 altogether. And so that's what they need to do to get the rights to parcel B. Parcel E2 is right now planned for TPAC. And if by January 1st, 2026, at least under this agreement, if the TPAC agreement is not signed, then E2 reverts to being within scope under the Master Development Agreement. There was an MOU signed between TPAC and Metro that outlined what the framework of a deal. It has specifically said several times the agreement that is a non-binding, and that's about all I know about it right now. Obviously, what I've read in the paper is there are still negotiations ongoing. The master plan is attached to the master development agreement, and I think Fallon kind of talked about this. Again, you're talking about a project that's going to cover decades. It gives a strong indication of how they want to see the development occur, but you can't predict what's going to happen in the future. So there is a process upon which Fallon can ask for changes to be made in the master plan. The authority has the right to approve that if it's material, and so it gives some flexibility to the transaction as the needs change. There is no formal movement of property from the authority or Metro to Fallon in this agreement. When a particular parcel is ready to be developed, there will be a separate ground lease that will be signed between, in our case now, the authority and Fallon. And the ground lease form is attached as an exhibit, and of course that can be changed also, but the authority, both sides had to basically approve if there are going to be changes to the ground lease. Somebody asked me earlier about whether or not Fallon was going to be paying property taxes. The ground lease form does indicate that, yes, that Fallon's going to be responsible for paying property taxes.
All of the terms of the ground lease embedded in the agreement, or is it to be determined?
No, there's a 45-page agreement attached to the master development agreement.
I'm talking about dollars.
Oh, no dollars.
So from our vantage point, all the future income, we have no idea what that might or might not be.
There is a formula for rent in the master development agreement, so it's a fairly complicated process, but basically it entails, I don't know when it's going to happen, assuming when a particular building is complete, whether it's residential or hotel or something else. There's an appraisal done, and Metro gets a rent, depending on whether it's residential or hotel, I think between 4 and 4.5%. Fallon, help me out here. Yeah. So of whatever the appraised amount is on an annual basis. So the rent formula is set forth in the agreement. Once Fallon is ready to enter into the ground lease for a particular parcel, they need to develop a very detailed plan as to what the plans are going to be, how much it's going to cost, how it's going to be constructed, and that's all subject to authority approval. Okay. Budget, the authority can analyze the budget, look at the budget, complain about the budget, but basically it's really within the hands of Fallon. Fallon has the right to select its own architects, GCs, and other professionals, but they're supposed to consult with the authority, and we're supposed to approve it in our reasonable discretion. Okay, so here are the residential requirements. So 1550 is the minimum amount of residential required. No fewer than 5 buildings. 695 have to be income restricted. 2 buildings are all affordable. And then for the market rate units, 10% of the market rate units need to be affordable. And that's how you get to basically the 695. The income restrictions last for the term of the ground lease. There will be limitations on how much rent can be adjusted, and they have an obligation to make sure they market in a non-discriminatory fashion. Any questions about that? 3 hotels are permitted. That does not include any hotel that may be put on parcel B or G2. As Sean indicated earlier, G2 is being reserved for office. However, if in good faith they cannot find a tenant in 10 years, they can convert that to a hotel, and that hotel does not count towards the limit of 3. And if parcel B is, if they meet their residential requirements to have access to parcel B, a hotel can also be built on parcel B, and that also does not count towards the limit of 3. As Sean talked about this, there is an obligation in the MDA talking about grocery stores, daycare, cultural facilities, local retail, kind of a good faith, best faith effort. Obviously need to meet with us from time to time at our request, or at least twice a year, and they're responsible for getting all approvals, all rezoning, permits, all of that is within Fallon. Infrastructure is addressed in the MDA, and there's actually a schedule that's attached which indicates which party is responsible for which part of the infrastructure. It's divided into 3 different phases. One is work necessary for the new stadium to get up and running, then work necessary to complete Fallon's work, and then lastly, the central waterfront area. And so this is it's kind of an eye chart. I don't know how we want to proceed here, but an important part of this is that the bottom part is all really TBD at this point in time. And that includes paying for if I'm not mistaken, Ben, that includes how the road, the boulevard is going to be paid for. So, but basically it's divided up between Metro or the authority, Fallon, the stadium, the team, and TPAC. So there's still quite a few of TBDs when it comes to infrastructure. Go ahead.
With one caveat, the portion of the boulevard that is between E and D on the map is in the Fallon Company's responsibility fiscally. So.
All right. This is the preliminary development schedule and timeline, again, an eye chart. I would just ask Ben to comment on whether he thinks that we've met the milestones so far in what's here.
Yeah, in general, I wouldn't strain yourself too hard looking at this because in general, we are on schedule for meeting all of the Metro side, East Bank Development Authority side requirements, and the Fallon Company is in track meeting theirs.
Okay, modification to the development schedule. If there's a delay in the opening of the stadium, the team needs to notify Fallon. The authority has to approve any movement up in a milestone deadline. Of course, force majeure, things out of everybody's control, they don't count towards a timeline. So it can only be modified with the authority approval. There are an obligation to coordinate with the Titans in construction. There's also a separate agreement attached to the MDA, which sets forth greater detail on how this is going to be coordinated. And there's a coordination agreement. There's a site coordination agreement. I mean, it's unbelievably detailed.
And I'm sorry, those are all coordination agreements that the authority is entering with the
The authority is going to take, or those would be assigned to the
Okay.
authority, correct?
Okay.
There is, as Sean mentioned, there is a DEI commitment. There's a schedule which sets forth, but basically it's a 25% design, 30% construction. There's also a workforce development program commitment, and there's a wage commitment on the construction employees. If the developer fails to meet development milestones and the authority has not approved any movement on that, the exclusive remedy of the authority is to terminate the agreement. Okay. It's not considered an event of default. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if the milestone is not met, the authority's remedy is to terminate the entire agreement. Events of default are fairly typical in this type of thing. If the developer doesn't do something it's supposed to do, whether it's an agreement to, they decide they're not going to build affordable housing for whatever reason, then obviously that's an event of default, and we can sue and get damages on that. So obviously if they go insolvent or if they go bankrupt, then that's also an event of default. I mean, if the guarantor goes bankrupt, then we're also kind of in a mess here. But that's a pretty typical thing. I think that the major thing is that the only remedy is if they don't meet their timeline is to terminate the agreement. And so, listen, these agreements are, as you well know, are heavily, heavily negotiated. And you can't take, one provision out of context and say, boy, I wish we'd done something else here. We have no idea, why that was done or what it was traded for. And people make the mistake sometimes of picking apart, one or two provisions they don't like in a contract without having happened to me many times and without understanding what all the background is. And obviously if there's an event of default, we can terminate the contract. I think it's my last slide. The idea is that to settle disputes, we're going to basically have senior people meet. That includes the chief executive officer of the authority, Mr. York, and very, very senior people at the developer. So that's it for the Fallon agreement. There are dates in the contract for when construction needs to commence and when it needs to be complete. Those are milestones. Construction is basically 2 years after the site is ready. And completion depends on what type of building it is. It could be 5, it can be 7, depending on what we're talking about. Sean, do you have any comment on that? Okay. Any questions on that agreement?
At the risk of being that person who picks apart one thing that
Yes.
stuck with me about 12 slides ago, I was disappointed to see that only 15% of the affordable housing really looks like it's family friendly.
That is.
And is there any room for negotiation on that?
I mean, the deal terms are pretty well structured, so they're pretty well cooked. I think there's an opportunity for us to have a dialogue with our partners. I mean, market conditions change all the time, so that we can have that dialogue with our partner at Fallon, but deal terms be what they are currently. So,
Ben, I just want to make a statement. Everybody in here is looking at this amazing project. I seen that the construction is going to be paid a livable wage. Once this project is up and running and it's going, we're going to be dealing with something that we've been dealing with in Nashville forever. People that's running the Titan Stadium, they're not making livable wages. They're busing in, they're commuting in outside of Davidson County to be able to find a job. So is that something that Fallon is going to, or anybody of the development is going to be looking at, trying to pay people a livable wage where they can actually stay in the area to live here?
are you talking post-construction?
Yeah, post-construction.
Post-construction, that I can't speak to that. We can say pretty clearly what the deal says about during construction, but post-construction, can't really speak to it, but your point is heard. It's understood. We can continue that dialogue as we get further into the weeds with Fallon as they start to look at leasing.
All right. So AECOM, it shouldn't take too long. Ben's already talked about what their scope is, preliminary design of the Boulevard. Here's the scope: project management, environmental, stakeholder involvement, all the things that Ben already talked about. These are listed in a schedule to the agreement. What's not in scope is the final seal construction plans. The agreement is kind of not the clearest drafting when it comes to the amount, but my way of looking at it, if you go beyond the $6,571,000, the authority probably has to approve it. It might make sense to bring it to the board anyway. So that's just their fees. It's a 2-year contract, and again, terminable for convenience on 30 days notice. And of course, terminable immediately if there's a breach by AECOM. And that's it. There are several other agreements that are being assigned that tie into the MDA. There's a parking agreement with the Titans, which is being assigned. There's this coordination agreement among the Titans, Fallon, and Metro that's being assigned to us, but they all tie into the MDA. What is not being assigned to us is the MOU, which is not an agreement anyway, regarding TPAC. I've got 12 more agreements I'd like to go over with all of you if that's...
Typical lawyer.
He got a microphone. I'm going to take it away from him.
We good? All right.
So with that, we're done. We wanted to give you just a brief overview of the contracts that were being assigned and the scope of what is being assigned to the board, and then leave it up to you to do your business from here on. And we're here to answer any questions if necessary.
Thank you both so much. I think that we are now, after that very informative little bit of time, thank you all for that, officially on the board's consideration of the intergovernmental agreement between Metro and the authority. And again, that was by way of background, so we kind of know what it is, in addition to the agreement, what it is that the agreement assigns to us. So would open that for consideration.
And I assume if we consider a motion, then there's discussion before any vote.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'd move to approve the intergovernmental agreement as currently drafted.
I would second that motion, Scott.
So we have a motion for consideration and discussion for approval. So open it for discussion now between the board members.
Ben, thank you for all these detailed. There was a point on HDR, 25 million, and AECOM was 6 million and some change. And then you mentioned the 4.5% on the Fallon deal. Did you say that was 4.5% on the building or just the land that the building's on after completion?
After completion, as I understand it.
The value of the land after completion?
Yes.
So I guess embedded in this agreement is a lot of money. We got a Schedule F, which is 125 plus million. Is there any additional budgets that we would be approving as part of this agreement and sources of revenue of how this authority is going to pay for it?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest question marks that's out there. And as appreciate it. That's one of our daily jobs is trying to figure out what needs to be done and then how do we pay for it? And the best way I can put a summation on that is we're looking at all of the places where we can make dollars stretch further. So if there's federal grants, if there's state grants, we've applied for brownfield grants to do some of our planning work and some of our environmental testing. We've applied for federal grants and earmarks for different pieces of broader infrastructure. We've looked at ways that we can partner with future developments up and down the East Bank. And so if, a general piece of property comes in and wants to develop, are there ways that we can make dollars stretch further by 50 cents on our dollar, asking for additional funding from them, from various property owners and developers. We're really trying to figure out a way to make this as least punitive to the overall budget as possible, and being able to fulfill our infrastructure need in a way that's good for the city.
So how does that tie back to Schedule F, which is part of this agreement?
Yeah, so Schedule F is the initial funding that has occurred over the last several years. And so that gets us to a point where we can purchase some right-of-way that is required for the Boulevard between Jefferson and Woodland. It allows for some utility investments in and around the stadium that are not necessarily stadium-related, but adjacent to, and allow us to fulfill some of the requirements that are in the Fallon agreement. It allows us to future-proof and allow for future development of parcels north and south of the Metro-owned land as it relates to sewer availability. And so there's dollars baked in there for operating, there's dollars baked in there for capital, and so there's a schedule in there that allows for those types of improvements.
Would that include salaries of the authority employees?
There are capital investments in there that are not included in Schedule F.
Okay.
The full-time staff from HDR is baked within the Schedule F dollars that are transferring over.
The $25 million.
Portion of it, yes. It has not been fully obligated yet and funded. It is funded on a year-to-year basis.
Right. It's out there.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion or any other questions? All right. Well, then we've got a motion that's been properly seconded. And call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. I'm sorry. Any abstentions? Thank you to my legal counsel. Any abstentions? I saw everybody's mouth moved, but yes, for the record, no abstentions either. So we will, that motion prevails, and the IGA has been approved. And with that, that's the last item on the agenda, so we'll adjourn, unless you have something.
So, in this in the beginning, now that we've gotten through the IGA, is it appropriate that we make a motion moving forward that we hire Saul as our board counsel?
That is a good point. Saul's engagement initially only contemplated the IGA.
That's right. I knew that. That's
Sure.
why I'm bringing it up.
So I think that from here on out, I believe that it is the CEO's authority to hire the attorney from here.
For us?
For us, because he's now part of the authority. So, Mr. York, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, and I think that following this vote, I think that myself and Ms. Greider would like to sit down and meet with Saul and his team and just kind of go through the finer points of what he sees his role, what the experience is, get to know Saul and his team a little bit better, and then bring that update to this board at the next meeting.
But that was a fair question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I want to retrain another lawyer to go through all these.
I hear you. All right, then the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.